I have attempted to use one dating app. Signed up a profile, of course with the help of a friend, because it wasn't very accessible. But I think I hit a snag when it required me to identify see people's faces and then swipe them right if I like them, or I think swipe left if I do not like, or maybe I want to pass to the next one. So my desire to study human rights began from way back when I was still young. I had good career anchors at home and a strong support system. And I would watch this program, which was like a legal show, but in Swahili, which is the national language in Kenya. It was called Vioja Mahakamani. And I always used to say that I'm either going to become a lawyer or a judge when I grow up. And I had very strong career anchors because my parents, my siblings, and many people around me believed that my dream would come true. My name is Wilson Macharia. I am a doctoral candidate at the Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria, where I also work as a tutor and a project researcher at the Disability Rights Unit. I come from Kenya, and perhaps I should also mention that I am visually impaired, in other terms, blind. There are many varying degrees of visual impairment. There are people who are totally blind, meaning people who cannot see at all. And then there are those who are blind, but they have some perception of light, which is where I belong. And there are also people who are partially sighted. It's like a glass half full or a glass half empty, however you choose to see it. I would be considered in other jurisdictions as somebody who's legally blind, because in as much as I have some perception of light, that the light that is around me, to mean that I can tell when it's dark and when there's light, I am still visually challenged to the extent that I cannot do a lot. My abilities that I would do with my eyes are sort of limited. For instance, I cannot read small print, standard print on books. I cannot walk alone, especially when it's dark, and even when there is light and in an unfamiliar location, I'd have to walk with somebody or with a white cane or with a guide dog.
Us for the self-same thing is God, who also hath given unto us the earnest of the Spirit. Therefore we are always confident, knowing that whilst we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. For the love of Christ constraineth us, because we thus judge that if one die for all, then we're all dead. And that he died for all, that they which live should not henceforth live for themselves.
For me, technology means the world. First of all, I say that because I'm a tech enthusiast. And I also consider myself to be tech savvy to some extent, based on the things that I've taught myself using technology. I often like telling my colleagues and friends and people I interact with that for persons without disabilities, technology makes things easier, but for persons with disabilities, technology makes things possible, and it has made a lot of things possible for me. For instance, there are a number of things quite a number that I do independently, that in another world, without the technologies that I use, I wouldn't be able to do them. So that is the difference between having technology and not having it for me.
Audible. Actions available. Audible. Audible. Home. Image. Audible. Image showing the included tag. Listen all you want. You have access to all titles in the Plus catalog. Got it. Button. Got it. Button. Home. Image. From your wish list. Heading. A step-by-step French study. Mini player. Opens the full. Becoming. Chapter 2. There's 18 hours. 10 minutes left at 1.0 speed. Jump back. Button. Play. Button. Starts playback. Play.
Varying
Pause.
degrees.
Button. Chapter 2.
And were told to sit down at whatever point they got stumped. It was meant to be something of a game, I think. The way a spelling bee is a game. But you could see a subtle sorting going on. And a knowing...
Many people assume that once a person with visual impairment is involved, then it's only Braille that they can use. I do not have anything against Braille, but I also prefer when options are availed, because as I said, there are varying degrees of visual impairment, and some people lose sight earlier than others. For instance, I should have mentioned that I was born visually impaired, or I acquired my visual impairment when I was very young, to the extent that I could not remember seeing better, perceiving things better than I do now. But there are people who lose sight at adulthood, and it would be difficult to introduce a reading language or mode or format like Braille to someone who is an adult. So technology for me, I attended regular schools for the earlier parts of my life. So between when I was 3 years old and 12 years old, I attended regular school, which means I wasn't taught Braille or any other alternative formats, mostly because my parents at the point did not know of the special schools around me, and Braille was only introduced to me when I turned 13 and joined a special school for persons with visual impairment. So that means that for me, Braille has been a secondary format of reading and mode. I still consider myself proficient in Braille, but when I got into university, I realized that Braille itself actually caused a communication barrier between me and my colleagues, or between me and my lecturers, in that the institution was not a special institution for persons with visual impairment. It would be difficult to find such a university. So I had to identify a way which, when I do my stuff or work on my assignments or take my notes, I could also share them with my colleagues and they would be able to see them, or to give my assignments to my lecturers and would be able to read them. In fact, I remember once attempting to do an assignment in Braille, and the lecturer at the time phoned me and asked me how would I be expected to mark this, or what would you recommend? Do I get somebody to transcribe this into print so that I mark it? Which then would mean that some information would be lost, because most of the things I'd written were legalistic. And that is where, when I started exploring the possibilities of using a computer with screen reader, which I'll demonstrate. And basically, my computer has a screen reader installed that reads everything that is displayed on the screen. And when I adapted this way, it means that the lecturer would send me reading material in soft copy, which I could read in my computer. I could type my assignments and send it via email or print it, which means the lecturers would be able to read that. I would utilize notes that my colleagues have taken, that is, if they typed them, and I would also share my notes with my colleagues, which means that when I started using that technology, then the communication barrier between me and my colleagues and my lecturers was eliminated. And I have used that technology from the time I did my undergraduate, my LLB, and up to now for my PhD. It's the same that I'm using. Of course, with time I have gotten to acquire more technology that I can use to make my work easier, but that has been the basic technology that I've been using.
Let's see what time it is. Okay.
I use my laptop mostly for research. That's what I use when I'm finding material for writing my work, both for work and school and education. I use it also to type the information that I want to reduce into the research. Of course, I use it also for a bit of leisure, playing some music or studying music on the background, but I would consider my laptop
Disabilities.
to be the basic device. I have a Braille Touch, which is a tablet running on Android ecosystem or operating system. This is a tablet that has a screen, a display that displays things in print format, but also has a Braille display underneath below it. So it is sort of a universal design tool that displays both in Braille and in print. I use it mostly for taking down quick notes. Maybe when I'm researching on something on my computer and I see a point that is important for my work. I use it also when I am presenting classes or talks or presentations for people, because it's portable and I can, read with my fingers in Braille. And I use it also when I'm traveling to read a book or take some notes when I'm on the plane, or even take notes when I'm in a conference. And then there's the Focus 14 Braille display. My friends like calling it a man pass because it looks like a pass. It's quite small. This one is hardly used independently. I have to pair it with my phone or my computer. And basically what it does is, since there's a screen reader installed in my phone or a screen reader installed in my computer, if I do not want to listen to that information, for instance, I don't want to put on headphones, or I'm in a public place and it's noisy, I can't hear my phone well, or also just for privacy, I don't want people to hear what I'm doing, I use the Braille Focus, the Focus 14 display, as a Braille display for my phone and computer. So it has a Braille keyboard that I can use to input text on my phone or computer, and it also has a display that I can read text messages or information that is being displayed on my phone or computer. So while using it, most probably my phone is in my pocket, or my computer, I have the lid turned, the lid is closed so that nobody sees what is happening, or I have used a function called screen cutting so that the screen is dark. Nobody can tell what I'm doing unless you can read Braille. And there's the Victor Reader, which I hardly use now, because I got it from one of my mentors when I was in campus. He bought a more advanced version. It came in handy to record my classes back then, because I didn't have the Braille displays and it was difficult to type, take down notes in class and listen to the lecturer at the same time using my computer. Wilson, remember to send an email to the manager this afternoon. So it was easier to record my classes and then put bookmarks in those classes so that if there's an important point I can skip to it, and sometimes even listen to audiobooks using them. Of course, most of these functions have now been replaced by the current phones that are available. And then there's a PAL camera, which is a portable camera that can be connected to a computer. And the barrier that this one eliminates is when you get physical books or documents or printed material that you need to read, for instance, in a library. So what you do is you just open that book, set it up below the PAL camera, which has a stand, and the stand has a guide to show you where to place the book, and you manipulate your computer using the keyboard to make the camera or the computer start reading the book using the camera. So this one is very good for libraries and can be used by many people if it is installed. But again, this has also been replaced by my phone, which I can easily just take a picture or a shot and convert it into text. Yeah, so just by that small information, I know they are the fish fingers, and that's what I was looking for. And so what I would have to do is open the air fryer. It's automated, it's an automatic one, but I have to press the start button. And then I'm gonna throw the fish in there. I've taken some pieces, so and I can use my hand to spread them out. Of course, I've cleaned my hands. And then what I do after is press the start button, which I know is the the last button on the right. So I just press start. That is to power it on. And then I'll press the cook button or this dial in the middle. It will just automatically detect what is in there.
Persons with disabilities face multiple barriers when accessing the justice system. These barriers:
technology and love, technology and relationship, that would be quite an interesting subject, but one that would also be important to discuss. I think one of the things that most people learned, especially due to COVID-19, is that the normal ways of meeting people were somewhat prohibited. For instance, when lockdowns were imposed and other regulations implemented by states, people resorted to using technology for literally everything, work, studies, shopping, and all that, and to some extent even meeting people, for instance using dating apps. I have attempted to use one dating app, signed up a profile, of course with the help of a friend, because it wasn't very accessible. But I think I hit a snag when it required me to identify see people's faces and then swipe them right if I like them, or I think swipe left if I do not like, or maybe I want to pass to the next one. So the interesting thing with that is that the way screen readers operate is to move to the next gesture, or to just have a gesture on my phone to do something, I usually swipe on my screen. So I ended up swiping so many people, sometimes even unintentionally, but that was a point when I was even having a conversation with my friends, like, okay, how would such an app be made accessible? But outside that, I would say using accessible technology to access social media, for instance, has made it even possible for me to meet people, for me to interact with people, some of them who know that I'm visually impaired, some of them who do not know until we start having conversations and I tell them. And at one point even, had to plan a blind date, meeting people, the ones we meet online, like anyone else would do. I guess the only difference between this date and the normal general dates is that this was a double blind date, a double that on the one hand we didn't know each other before that, and then on the second hand one party was actually blind. So over and above my studies and work, technology plays quite a crucial role in my life. I mean, there are also fun things that I do using technology, which means that I do not need assistance from other people. For instance, I use my phone or computer to watch movies, or rather listen to movies on platforms such as Netflix, and just look for those which have audio description. And the good thing is, with the current movement advocating for digital inclusion, even content providers like Netflix, Amazon as well, are now providing content which has audio description for those of us who are not able to perceive what's going on. That's the same case for persons who are deaf. The captions are very useful to help them follow on the movies. Secondly, I also use my watch quite a lot when I go to the gym, in two ways. The first is it helps me know how many calories I am burning, right? Secondly, it also helps me know what my heart rate is, especially when I'm involved in some engaging exercises, physical exercises. And since I do not personally have a gym instructor, what I do is I use the staff who are in the building and tell them, I will do this machine, the rowing machine, for 10 minutes. Please come back after 10 minutes to help me move to the next machine. And what happens after that is I use my watch to check the time and make sure that I do the 10 minutes that I have intended. I also use my phone to access social media. I'm quite active on Facebook, for instance, Instagram and Twitter. I also, from time to time, visit my LinkedIn and update my LinkedIn account. And you see, this is professional on the one hand, but also on the other hand, it helps me with advocacy and also just, see what's going on out there in society, see what other people are saying, and also connect me with my friends, right? I use the accessible technology to listen to music, know what music I'm selecting, search for music. I can use the keyboard to search for the music or the content I want to listen to, or even use just audio description or a narration to look for the content that I want. I also use technology, especially that one with my phone, when I'm taking walks. It happens to everyone that sometimes you want to take a walk and you really want to do it alone. What I use is Google Maps. Just set a location that I want to walk to. Of course, it has to be around the environment I stay in. And as perhaps most viewers of this video might have noticed, is when you have Google Maps on, for instance, in your car or when you're walking, there's usually an audio an audio feedback directing you when to take a left and when to take a right. So I use that quite a lot. And when I get to a point where I'm looking, say, for a restaurant or a coffee place like Starbucks, I can easily just do a video call, a WhatsApp video call to my girlfriend maybe, or just my friend, and ask them, do you see this restaurant? Can you see a signboard written this? Can you help direct me to it?
Combo. A top rated restaurant with 4.6 out of 5 stars based on 300 reviews. Delivery fees back button. Create group order button. Debonair's Pizza. Menlo $0 delivery fee with restaurant info. Debonair's Pizza. People say adjustable. Search menu. Main menu. Order again. Heading.
When thinking of technologies, assistive technologies for persons with disabilities, there are two main categories. The first is generally accessible devices, and then the second is specialist devices. Difference, as the terms may suggest, is that specialist devices are made specifically for persons with disabilities or specific types of disabilities. For instance, I can use my watch collection to illustrate that. So this is a dot watch. That's the title of the name of the watch. It is a smart watch that has a display in Braille. For instance, now it shows 704. I'm not sure that that is right. So it connects to the phone and can display some notifications here that I can use Braille to read. I can set a timer for it or using it, and also create some short memos. But it connects with my phone using an app. So I call this a specialist device because it can only be used by persons who are visually impaired. This I would consider to be an accessible watch because it's a regular watch that can be used by everyone, even without a disability, but would also benefit someone who has a visual disability because I only use my finger to read it and then close it. That is the same case with the Apple Watch that I am using. This is a regular Apple Watch, which I'm sure you've seen on the wrists of many people. But the only difference is that this one
19 voice
comes with a screen reader inbuilt. So I did not have to add any third-party software. All I need to do is click the crown thrice
voiceover on,
and it starts speaking to me. So it has just said it's 1909. From this phone watch, I can be able to read messages on my phone. I can be able to check my heart rate. I can be able to create timers, and I can also be able to talk to Siri. I also found something very interesting. When I was setting up the watch, it asked me whether I am a wheelchair user. And I checked that online and saw that it asked that so that it doesn't count the steps that you take, because you do not take steps when you are using a wheelchair. But it still measures how many meters or kilometers you move or roll every day. It is very important to avail technologies, specifically inclusive technologies, for persons with and without disabilities. I often use the illustration of a building that has stairs but doesn't have a ramp. When you construct a ramp on that building, it would be meant for people who have physical disabilities, but everyone else ends up using the ramp because it is an easier way to access the building. When you design for persons with disabilities, then you design for everyone. And it is for this reason that the Tech for Right campaign is being run by the Center for Human Rights hoping that it will appeal to you and other organizations to always have in mind the need for persons with disabilities to access technologies like everyone else. I don't know how much I could achieve without technology. And if I think of my life without technology, then I think it would be a difficult one. Turn volume to 70%.
Media volume set to 70%.
Siri can be quite rude sometimes. It just says, "Hey Siri." Hey Siri. Play Wa by Kofi Olomide.
Now playing Wa featuring Kofi Olomide by Diamond Platnumz.
Anachukua, anaweka wa le général Dangote. Anachukua, anaweka wa le grand Mobao. Anachukua, anaweka wa boss ya mbuka. Anachukua, anaweka wa tagamu kupendwa na ina wabusu nini wamekusa babaya na wakabu lazima wachuchume wameingia cha kike. Ewa cha kike wameingia cha kike cha kike wameingia cha kike kwa penzi letu cha kike lazima wachuchume kwa penzi letu cha kike Makokote Abutale Don Mendes Bajuni H Bajuni chumbani enesi unipatia panado kujenga za Messi na mashuti ya Ronaldo yani ndani nikiingia tu anachukua anaweka wa kwenye gari anachukua anaweka iwe jikoni uvara